start, we have some meeting minutes for August 5th, 2019. I've reviewed them. I have no questions. Either the other board members.
I am fine with the
I've
minutes.
also reviewed them, they look fine to me.
Make a motion to approve the minutes for August 5th.
Second?
Any further discussion? Call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll get to some of the old business. We'll start with the Grove Street Extension maintenance. This was brought up at the last meeting.
Did I set mine down in front of you, because I don't have it anymore? There we go. Thank you.
So, we'll start with, after the last meeting, we ended up with 2 to 3 different groups talk to us about things that they might do. And Andrew has a little bit more of an update based on first steps that we've all agreed to do. And I believe that the Barre Savings Bank has once again stepped up to assist us with an initial run at providing some mulch and helping with the immediate needs.
So thanks to Bulgob Landscaping, they stepped up and did all the work. I believe the Barre Savings Foundation paid for the mulch to do all that. So it does look all brought back up to its former glory. But I think moving forward, from our position, we should plan on the planned maintenance going forward as a town to make sure that that area is taken care of.
I completely agree and support that.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that I was approached by representatives of the Boy Scouts also thinking that they might volunteer some time to start working on that. We'll continue to see their interest in the level that they can commit to. I would love to bring them in, even if it's just to help do a little of it, because it's always good to show some civic duty and appreciate the offer from any of the local groups. So I would like to continue to pursue that, but as a backup, I would agree that I think we need to look at just making sure that we fund it no matter what, whether we're paying a professional or we have in-house people with the capability to maintain that properly.
Maybe the first step be come up with a maintenance schedule for what we want to do down there. And if the volunteer groups can fulfill that schedule, then we don't have to have our guys do it. But in the event that they don't in any given time period, then they could come through and do whatever needs to be done, whether it's weeding or pruning or something else. But gives us the opportunity to let the volunteer groups do it if they can.
Yeah.
And at the latter part of the time frame for the maintenance schedule, whatever we do for a schedule, I don't even have any idea how to start with that. But set a schedule.
I would treat it like my own house. At a minimum, you gotta be there once a week to see what's going on. Doesn't mean you have to put a lot in, but if you wait once a month, you probably have 2 weeks of it looks like a mess before you clean it up, and then you go 2 weeks good and then 2 weeks a mess. It's just the nature of the lawn in the summer. Even if you mulch it properly, you have certain areas, but then the edges and everything else start to add up. So I would look at a minimum. We need someone stopping in once a week, pay attention, just like other volunteers that deal with the bushes and the flowers around the gazebo. We've been very lucky with those that volunteer that. I'm sure they're not waiting 3 or 4 weeks before they just check to see if something's dying. It's something that matters to them, so I believe they're out there. I can't name them, so I'm not going to try. I will fail miserably, but it's something I truly do appreciate. So that's where I'm at. I would look at a minimum, just like the park's going out there to mow. I don't know how often they mow, but they can't be waiting too long between mowing.
I'm just thinking if we can at least leave it, if they're gonna go have a look at it and do some maintenance, maybe if it's earlier in the week. So if we do have groups, and most likely the volunteers, I think would come out on the weekends. So if it's gonna have volunteers that come take care of things, it will probably be done over the weekend. And so if we looked at it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, sometime in that time frame for either the town can take care of it or we have to hire someone. If you hire someone, it's, they're just hired.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing. So hopefully it can be picked up by the town crew when they're mowing, whatever that schedule would be. And, hopefully it's picked up over the weekend. If groups want to volunteer and take care of it, then there's no need for them. When they come by to mow and do their maintenance, they can just move on if there's nothing left to do.
I agree. I just know that right now, the way we have our DPW set up with personnel and resources. Emergencies come up and they've got to change their priority. So I don't want to rely on in-house personnel unless the intent is to hire an in-house personnel that is here to do the job. To include maybe other spots so that we give them a full reason to do it. But to say that just add that to the list of things to do won't happen, and nothing against them. We're just asking too much of what we offer them in resources, and I don't want to keep adding that as, oh, we could do it. And then we have people before us again next July wondering what happened to Grove Street Extension. And it happens to be another torrential, rains every 2 days, and the crew is out cleaning streets all the time because of the rain and they can't do it. So I just want to go through this winter discussing this, preparing it in the budget so we know we can handle it no matter what comes up in the spring, that's all.
Well, that's my concern, is adding another item to the budget that isn't necessarily necessary.
Why is it not? We have
Well,
not succeeded in maintaining it for 3 years now? It's been ours for 3 years and we've done nothing to it. Why is it taking us 3 years?
Well, I think this is the first time we've talked about trying to get groups to maintain it. So hopefully before the budget time comes, we'll have this sorted out and hopefully it can be done with volunteer. But I would agree, if we don't get some kind of volunteer schedule before ATM, then we should have it in the budget and prepared to go and move forward at that point. But I'd still like to hope volunteer groups would take care of this. You know, put their sign out, this part cared for by whatever group that does it. And see if we can get it maintained that
We
way.
fund this similar things going down at Nornay Park. They buy flowers, they submit it, they get their money back out of the Southbury Common line item or the Parks and Recs line item. It's not like they don't purchase things that go towards the common that they're getting funded by the town to provide. I'm not saying everything that they do down there is funded by the town. I'm not trying to take away their volunteerism and their, I'm just saying that there is accounts where they are requesting money back for things they've done for the common because they're on the Southbury Common Committee,
I think the
which
South-
was established by the town.
I think the Southbury Common Fund, the amount that's appropriate to that, we have about $500 on that, and that's mainly, I think, went toward porta potties for the events that went down there. I'm not aware of any funding that goes toward actual maintenance of the grounds. But I can look into that to see what we actually do fund.
So I'm just saying that this isn't the first time people have come and asked about the volunteers. And it's not the first time we've asked for volunteers. It's the first time that 2 to 3 meetings in a row, people won't just let it go. Rightfully so. And for me, it's been scratching at the back of my head because it has been 3 years. And I have seen it, and it's time for the town to recognize this is what we bought when we bought the common with all of our loans and grants. Grove Street Extension and the landscaping around it was part of it, which means we now own it. Why are we asking somebody else to volunteer the time to take care of it? If
We're at-
someone steps up, I'm all for it, and then we just keep the money in the budget. But I would rather go in saying, we're gonna have to buy this maintenance. And then if we get lucky, we don't have to spend it, rather than the other way and hope that. That's just my position, because we haven't had enough people come to us and actually set up a volunteer schedule and say, we'll handle this. Rotating, we've been very lucky that we've had a couple, namely primarily one agency group that has stepped up each year and done something to help us out.
Before we get to that point, we have to determine what it's gonna need, what needs to be done and how often. We don't know exactly what we're talking about. Maybe we talk to Bogard Landscaping and see what they did and what they might recommend, or look and go to somebody and get an idea of how much effort we need to put in and what we're looking at spending before we go ahead and just do that. But it'd be good to get an idea of what needs to be done and how often. And
I agree.
because we can't go ask for prices, because we're gonna get 16 different numbers from people. We need to say we want the following work done at a timely basis, and then we can get quotes for it later, so. The starting point still has to be to figure out what needs to be done and how often. We can't say generally like we do in our own yard, we need to be very specific and we're gonna ask somebody for a price on it. And hopefully one of the local landscapers would do it for a reasonable fee, we'd hope. And then we could schedule it.
I agree.
How we're gonna develop that is the next step.
I would make a motion that we ask Andrew to pursue finding out a reasonable scope to request to maintain that and make it look good as it was intended, not, yeah, this'll do. In other words, what was installed and how do you make that survive and look better for the life of it?
So the motion's to task Andy with determining the maintenance schedule for it, basically. I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion on that one? Call for a vote.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
You may want to see if we did get lucky and when that common was built, someone passed us off any maintenance schedule for the landscaping that was installed as part of that. We might get lucky. If not, we might get someone that actually has the resources to figure out who planted it and can say, this is what you should do.
We do have.
I think there's somebody in the crowd that might be able to assist. Now, there is the sponsoring group that has helped us get through the last 3 years. Any of the representatives like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Board of Selectmen. Welcome, Dylan, to the Board of Selectmen. I sat in that chair, you know, as a young pup 42 years ago, as a matter of fact. I listened to the motion, and it's very important for me not to mess it up now that you've made this motion. It's on, the Grove Street extension is on your radar screen, and that's really important. I really believe that aesthetics, little bits of things go a long, long ways. When I go through town dozens of times a day usually, you know, you've got bikers out there and motorcycle people, regular bicycle people, recreation people. I'm darn proud of our town common. And literally, we got $3.2 million. It might as well have been in the backseat of my Volvo coming to Barre Common. And we suffered for 2.5 years of a lot of challenges, but it's darn good, and I'm proud of how it looks, and I'm proud of what everybody's doing. The Parks and Rec, I see them at the cemeteries doing a great job over the years as well. I believe, Mr. Selectman, that if we stay ahead of it, it's like any other maintenance, you stay ahead of it, little problems don't become big problems. I think we had Glidden over there a while ago. Did some research on all of this, and Looking Good did it for 4 to 5 years. There ought to be a person in charge of thank you notes, because apparently I'm told that he never got a thank you. And thank yous go a long, long ways. Volunteers are wonderful. And again, I think that you're wise to try to get the scouts or the community service projects to do that. My experience has been telling me over the years now, volunteers are getting less and less. We all know that. You find it less and less to serve in municipal offices. I'm sure there's a sheet of them that you'd love to get some people to run for, quite honestly. The Shriners have less Shriners now. Fire departments are clamoring to get call volunteers. It's hard, it's difficult. Quabbin kids were gonna do it, but apparently there was a liability issue for them, and so they didn't end up doing that as well. It would have been a great experience. The mulch that we did for this weekend here is $1,100. If it is against our regulations to give that to Bulgard directly or to pay Bulgard for that mulch, we would ask that the board filter that through. We've done that with the town of Hardwick on any number of things that we are doing for good causes down there for the charitable foundation as well. So thank you for keeping it on your radar screen. It's that important. I did, and I'll just hand this over to you, but just 2 other little things. The steps on the bandstand, I understand that they have been, they're out maybe for a rebid from the last time. I think some money has still been encumbered from that common project. When I talked with Mr. Hamill of Becky's Bistro the other day, and I wasn't searching for this, I was outside coming out of the package store, and I met him. And he said that 4 out of the 8 best business days that he ever had, and they've been in business 4 or 5 years, I think, were when they had band concerts on the Barre Bandstand. So and I don't know what the backstory is, if it's the steps or it's overtime, or private duty, or whatever. But if we can dig down on that, we were known, for 100 years for those band concerts, and now we have something to be proud of on the common. So if you could look in, just get, again, my very first remarks, little things make a big difference in that regard. And if we could do that, so the steps, and to try to get the band concerts back here. If there's a way, when we see what the resources are required, and I don't know, I honestly don't. So you say this at a public meeting, it's a challenge. Is it an overtime details for law enforcement, or is it the steps, or is it both, or a combination? But if somebody can dig through that, the season for band concerts is over now, but we can get it back again. You people labor here in August at Selectmen's meetings, and I watch some of this on cable TV through marijuana and some solar panels, and we're proud of the work that you do as giving. I know the job. I've been on that site. I was on it for 7 years. But if you possibly can do these little things to make things better, I'll leave these with you. I have the list of some of the things that the Barre Savings Charitable Foundation. It isn't Fidelity Bank. Fidelity Bank, when they dissolved, when they absorbed Barre Savings Bank, they created a trust fund of $1.5 million. And we only spend the interest on that every year. And we spend it in either Princeton, Paxton, or Barre, because that's where Barre Savings Bank branches were. And because Hardwick and that area is the Quabbin Regional School District, we look at those areas where those needs are as well. And we're always anxious to try to do the right thing. And you find Hardwick Youth Center, the kids in Gilbertville, they got nothing. They got nothing. And we did $6,000 this year for a summer youth program for these kids, you know, and coats for kids, and just a boatload of really good things, and the work that the membership of that does. But I appreciate the vote that you did. I saw in the Barre Gazette, the paper of record, the greatest paper that was ever created, actually, with the greatest editor. But I saw my good friend, Ann Tuttle, was here a couple of weeks ago, and I know the commitment that she and her husband have made to service in our country. They lived in 17 different communities when he was a lifer with the Air Force. 17. Dave Tuttle was the new kid in every school for his whole school. And I wanted to show my support, and that we at the Savings Foundation are very happy to be helpful as well. And thank you again for doing the right thing. Now I can go back to cocktail hour later on and be happy. I'll give this to you.
I just wanted to respond with the thanks for what the Barre Savings Bank, could you say that again? The
Barre Savings Charitable Foundation.
Barre Savings Charitable Foundation has done, not just for Barre, but what you generally do throughout the region. So,
And
thank you much.
we should address the bandstand issues, giving a response to what he's asked.
We'll let Andrew do it if he wants to, because it is in his town administrator's report. There is a reference to it, so I
Yeah.
don't want to walk on his report.
So right
But,
now, yeah.
Hold half a sec. I would
sorry.
like Ann to have a chance.
Okay, thank you. I do want to thank you for acting on Grove Street extension. And I was wondering who kind of oversees the common? Like I've noticed this past winter, I'm sure it wasn't done intentionally, but someone put something out, I'm sure, to get rid of an icy spot on the sidewalk, and evidently the wrong chemicals were used. So now you have that area of the sidewalk, you know, deteriorating.
Okay.
And I was just wondering I don't know who's responsible for putting,
It varies,
what-
only because there's a combination of some local efforts for the sidewalk,
like,
but the state does the plowing of Route 122
no, I'm
running
just
through.
talking, yeah,
So, in other words, those chemicals may be off a truck, or they may be off of somebody dealing with the sidewalk, or it could be any random person that said, I see an icy spot. So I'll give you that, I don't know.
yeah, but maybe some notice could be put in on what is the proper thing to put on these. It looked to me like sidewalk, it didn't look to me like the mature.
So there was an issue, with the pouring of the sidewalks that was identified by Mass DOT, that they didn't have the correct, the contractor didn't have the correct mixture when they poured it. So there are sections of the sidewalk, and that might be one of them that you see the early spalling with. So the contractor actually does own that maintenance, and Mass DOT is going after them to.
So he is going to
Yes.
repair it?
Yes.
Because I
Yep.
thought if they kept it up, there'd be a hole there.
Right, yeah, so there are a number of areas on the common that they
Okay, well,
pursue and should be.
thank you very much, just appreciate that.
And DOT, just so you know, is actually doing that on our behalf. They are chasing the contractor. I mean, it technically was their contract, but they don't own it now.
Right.
But they're still doing their job, so I wanna give them credit for the fact that they didn't let this sit, and they did follow up with us, I don't know how many months ago with that letter saying
about
that
2
this,
months ago.
2 months ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, they just didn't give us a timetable as far as when it was gonna be done, but they did say that it was apparent that it was a contractor issue that they would go after.
Okay, now,
Thank you much.
now we can address
And
the.
if, Andrew, if you'd like to say more about the bandstand, cause he's
Yeah.
been kind of pointing our review of that and what we can or can't do right now.
Yeah, so about a year ago, we did go out to bid on it, and we did get a price on a contract. And the initial scope of work that we did, it was kind of clear that, somebody had, I want to say they lowballed the price, but they did explicitly what we had asked. And as they kind of dug a little bit more into it, they were like, well, if you want to actually paint the, paint the siding, it's going to be this. And if you want to do this, we had the price escalated from, a $30,000 quote to a $100,000 quote, like nothing. So we decided to pull back on that. At this point, I've put out a request to an architect to do a feasibility study on it to ensure that any upgrades that we do don't trigger ADA compliance, or we actually do address any ADA issues, and that that any of the upgrades that we do, that there aren't any structural issues with the bandstand that are hidden that we don't know about right now. So we don't dump $100,000 into it and then find out that we have to tear it down or do significant amount of remediation work in the future. So right now I'm just waiting for a cost back for the architectural work to do that study, and then we'll figure out how we can proceed from there.
I know that the Harding Allen estate for weddings and pictures, a lot of wedding venues, things are up there as well. It's a kind of a focal point as well.
Yep.
I know how these things can escalate into the stratosphere.
Right.
And we gotta bring it back to life somehow, so.
We started trying to address it to do quick repairs and found out they're not gonna be quick, they're gonna get expensive. Then once they got too high in price, we tripped needing to build a handicap accessible ramp, which changes the complete look of that, which we're trying to avoid. And,
Good luck with that.
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
So we'll try to find some way.
it's probably to the point of trying to find a way to put a ramp on that's not gonna take away from, from what the bandstand is
Or a
at this
lift.
point, but, or a lift, and that's a possibility, but a lift outside is a.
It's issue,
Yeah, it's.
There are
it's
also
awkward.
opportunities where, depending on the type of event, it could just be a temporary access that's set up for the event and then taken down. That could also accommodate some of the ADA compliance necessary.
Yeah, the number 4 schoolhouse has a handicap ramp, but the rise and the run for that is not as extreme as getting up to the top of the bandstand.
Right.
It creates a different kind of a challenge.
Right,
You
it's,
gotta-
what is it, about 4 feet?
You
4.5
gotta go
feet?
1 foot per inch rise. And so if you're going up 4 feet, that's 48 inches, you gotta go out 48 feet with a ramp, or do the old zigzag landing concept. So that's why I'm recommending we look at either a lift that's built in where maybe kind of you can put shrubs around it so it doesn't jump out at you. But even ADA compliance wouldn't work there unless we put a hardscape to the lift from any local sidewalk. They can't be asked to go across the grass because it's not considered solid enough for anybody in a wheelchair or even a walker to necessarily be able to count on. So there's a lot of little weird nuances that fall into play of, well, how are we gonna make this work and then not literally make it look like we put a boardwalk on our common.
The ramp it can come with a turn. You can go so many feet turn, you just have to have enough feet sideways to turn and come back. And you could zigzag 3 times, but now it's gonna take up sort of, 15, 16 feet in one block, but it's.
Houston rebuilt theirs not too many years ago, and they were able to, I wanna make sure everybody has access to anything. That's what
Right.
the federal law is. It has been for 30 years. Anyway, thanks. Thanks,
Right.
guys. Appreciate it.
We'll keep working it, we'll find a way.
You got out early, you guys. You come on up to the house.
I appreciate it very much. All right, meeting's adjourned, everybody. No, it's not. It's a vote thing.
That's gonna be the challenges. I mean, if we had to go with the ramp, it's gonna be, you could go back and forth, it becomes sort of as wide as this room to go back and forth a couple times, get it up there, versus wrapping around it, you've gotta go all the way around the whole thing. It's
So
just-
with a feasibility study, be able to identify and say, this is what the cost for each was, and here's, if you had to do a ramp, how it could be done.
I'm gonna throw one idea out there. What about lowering the height of it?
I have heard that, but at that point, you might as well just remove the whole thing and
No,
rebuild.
not down to the ground, but I'm
So you
saying.
gotta take the whole
Oh,
structure
yeah,
off
oh,
the
yeah.
top, so at that
Right.
point, all you got
Well,
is a 4-foot
And the other
foundation while
possibility
you're cutting in
is,
half.
I wonder if you look at some place, if you took some pictures and went to some place like Reed's Ferry Shed you hear about, and said, if you want to build us a structure this big, what would it cost? And they may be able to build and deliver it, ready to go to our specs for a fraction of what people are talking about for repairing this. And then we still have to make accessibility, but you could probably, I would imagine, you see the stuff they advertise, they put out there, they build some big stuff. You could probably get it built exactly how you want it to look exactly how it is for a fraction of what people want to repair this. Then you'd have something brand new and, figure out how we're gonna do the access to it. But
That could maybe be a follow-up question to the architect
Yeah,
after Andrew
I-
gets
I-
his first questions answered.
In the first request, I asked to evaluate both repair and replacement costs.
well, replace for someone building here versus one of these companies that it builds and transports, it might be very different.
Yeah, I mean,
Very
yeah,
different.
it's just, we'll give them the feasible
Yeah.
option.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Because
the
I would
cost
think-
per square foot.
I would think their setup must be to prefabricate everything. They must have jigs and machines set to really assemble things
Mhm.
efficiently and quickly, and precisely.
Um,
But I don't know, just a thought. It may.
Yeah. I still think it's, next round of questions is probably the right way to break down what he does estimate for replacement, because like you said,
Mhm.
stick build versus somebody builds and brings and drops in place.
If they've got a
These are all
crew,
options we can pursue.
they've got a crew that does it in a shop, they may build this silly thing in a day, which, even 10 guys in a crew in a day is gonna be less than someone coming out to site with crews and paying union prevailing wages they go
Mhm.
versus buying a product. Where their
You don't have to
their
pay it
labor
when
is.
it's done in-house versus on-site. It's a
It
different rate.
triples prices for things typically, the prevailing wage, so
Yeah.
that kind of difference, if you can buy a ready-made product, would be huge.
I would like to move on to the next item. On this one, I would like to jump up to the Joe's Journey for Recovery special permit. Come on up, sir. I believe is this your second annual?
Yes. This is
All right.
our second.
Good to see you, Rob.
Yeah, good to see you.
So see you again.
Thank you.
Sit down, relax.
All right. So, yeah, last year we put it on and it was pretty successful. We had only, I think, 5 weeks total from the time that we decided we were gonna do it, when it took place. And we had a good turnout. We had a couple hundred people and did well. So we're hoping this year we have even more.
I like the location, the way you're setting up, because it really has no impact really on the town.
Yeah.
The type of roads you're choosing are easy ones to work around, and the time of day and all of that works out great for us.
Yeah. Now, Chief Carbone did tell me, and I don't think it marked it on the route map, but he was gonna supply 3 officers.
Is that what that denotes there?
No, he was gonna, let's see.
That's where
This
they're
is-
gonna have people to
Yeah,
help them
yeah.
know which way to go.
Yeah, so he was gonna have somebody at Valley Road and Old Colebrook.
Right here.
Then someone up at Cutoff Road and another officer here.
Okay.
So Fruitland and.
The main, where all of a sudden cars might come in,
Right.
there's a little
Yeah.
bit of a hay. Okay. Perfect. And then, what's the date of this again?
September 14th,
This Saturday?
yes.
Perfect. And like the cornhole and stuff, is that on Felton Field? Is that where you're doing that stuff?
It's gonna be right where the tennis courts are,
Yeah.
right in that area.
Okay, perfect. I like it. If I recover from my ACL surgery in time, I might be down there, even if it's
Yeah,
just to
yeah,
wave and say,
definitely
hey.
come down, sure.
'Cause,
Stop and visit. We have several resource tables that are gonna be set up, different organizations that are to do with addiction. There's gonna be Narcan training, food trucks.
Okay, nice.
A little bigger than last year.
Hopefully, yeah.
That's good.
Anybody
A
have
little
any
more
further
activity.
questions?
No, I'm glad to see you doing it again.
Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the special permit for Joe's Journey for Recovery 5K in Cornhole Tournament on September 14th.
I second that motion.
Any further discussion? Call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Bob.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Hope to see all of yous.
I'll
there.
come down again.
Yes, sir.
It'd be great if I can make it.
Yeah, Andrew. Yeah, good to see you.
All right. Now I'm gonna get back to. All right, I'm gonna have one moment for public comment. Public comments? Yes, Mary Jane?
For many years, I've been trying to find out who owns the basketball hoop on Trafalgar Square. And is it on Barry's land, or is it a landlord's land? And how did it get there?
Yeah.
And how does it get removed? Because there's a lot of disorderly trouble happening up there, and drinking in the street, and causing me a great deal of trouble. They're taking the ball purposely and hitting it up against my tire 12 times. And it's getting worse because they're allowed to do these things up there. And I'd like to know how I could get an article on the warrant in November that would be favorable for two people on the board. Because everybody goes according to your decision. So how can I write an article to bring peace to my neighborhood?
Neighborhood support would be a big starting point.
The neighborhood support, is the ones that are playing and causing the trouble. Call it, saying the words hate is being used against me, and nasty unkindnesses, and you're an evil woman. And it's not being stopped, it's being escalated. Before I get hurt, I'd like some help. Two people from the Board of Selectmen of the town to help a senior citizen, homeowner, and resident of Trafalgar Square. I've tried 3.5 years. There better be another place in town for the basketball hoop. Whoever is in charge of the common committee got it out of there in one sentence. It's gone because of, we don't want to hurt the grass. You're not going to hurt the grass when you have asphalt underneath. It belongs in a park, not outside my house.
My understanding also is, tell me if I'm wrong, Mary Jane, because I don't want to say something that I misremember. But my understanding is when she suggested basketball hoop at Nornay Park, she actually was not suggesting using the parking lot. She was suggesting putting a basketball hoop at the back, down by the railroad, that end of it. So even if people were playing basketball, they're far enough away from events that are going on at the gazebo in the front where people are playing music, that you literally could have two separate things going on that could be respectful of each other, not side by side or taking up a basketball game while people need the parking space for the event. So it was different than I imagined when I first heard it, because I thought it was just used, we got the pavement for the parking lot, just put up a hoop, and that's what I thought was being presented at the time she mentioned it. Am I correct in stating it the way I am? Is that accurate to what you're?
Correct as to where the site would be, but I was down at the last community band concert on the Quabbin, and they had ball playing there in that area, up by the railroad tracks, way up on the hill. Were kicking the ball, the children, right beyond the porta potty, whatever you wanna call it, and they were throwing frisbees. Those are games. Why are we discriminating against a basketball hoop?
She makes a good argument, so I don't have a good answer to that.
Well, I don't know if it's up to us to say that there's gonna be something in Nornay Park, and I think that's what stopped us before, that we've let the Parks Commission do what they're going to do with the parks. I don't think
We can still voice our opinion.
right. but-
They can have an
but we
opinion,
certainly
but
can't
they also
dictate that.
represent the town, not just their neighborhood.
And this is also the issue now of asking to have another basketball hoop taken out, that we don't know if it's a private property or where I don't even know where it is or who owns it, and it doesn't mean that a basketball hoop someplace else is gonna stop people from playing basketball on her street. We don't know that either. My concern is always that I understand she's very upset and she's been asking for a long time, but without any other community support, it's very hard for me to get behind something that doesn't have any other support from the community so far. And I don't want to belittle your problems with it, and I understand it. It means a lot to you and you're having good issues with it, but from what I've heard, when the police have gone down, the police have not found anything bad or disruptive that they've found or reported on. And we certainly haven't had anybody else come up to, especially from that street, and say that they want something changed. So it's hard for me to get behind asking to have the basketball hoop taken out. I'm not against one at Nornay Park, but I certainly think it's something that needs to be brought up with the Parks Commission and get them to agree to it and understand where it's going to be and welcome it. It's not going to be forced on them. I don't think it would be effective that way at all. This is something we should hit the agenda item for sometime, put this on the agenda instead of just a correspondence, so that we can give people from that area a chance to come and speak on it, one way or the other. We're sitting here, we've never actually put this on our agenda to say, let's bring people in and talk about it. Maybe it's time we do.
I agree, and we should also look at the Parks and Recs Committee. They're a different voice that should be heard on this.
We could ask they come to our next meeting and put this on the agenda, and ask the Parks and Recs and ask the people who do the events and things in Nornay Park to come in and have a discussion about this as a group. We can't do this fragmented, it's not gonna work.
I agree with you.
This is like when we were trying to talk with Stetson and we couldn't all get together. It's very hard to make headway without the group getting together.
What I would recommend, if you guys agree then, is to ask Andrew to reach out to the Southbury Common Committee and the Parks Recs Committee and find out if our next meeting or the meeting after that is an acceptable meeting where we can put it on the agenda and all of us can be in the room together and start the conversation.
That would work. Now, the basketball hoop you're talking about, is this mounted, or is it portable, or is it in the ground mounted, the basketball hoop you're talking about?
The one in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's portable, it can be at one end of Trafalgar or the other, where they like to play the basketball and the others don't mind.
Okay. I thought you were talking about a permanent hoop, so I would say we could find out who owns it, but if it's portable,
I
it's.
would like to know if it's on Barre property, town property, and a liability, or if it's on somebody's land and who owns it, who bought it, or did somebody move away and leave it? It shouldn't be in front of my home for 3.5 years. Let's put it at the end of Trafalgar, on Church for 3.5 years. Let's put it on Nelson for 3.5 years. That should take care of my life.
We could ask DPW to look at where it's located, if it's on the town road. The town has a certain, the roads are all mapped out in the state map, and then it gives you the right of way of the road. So we have an idea of
Center line, below.
center line, it's
30 foot,
typically
50 foot.
typically beyond the side of the road. So if this is actually sitting on town property, they could try to find out who owns it. If we really wanted to get them to talk in, they could pick it up and take it to DPW. When people come to collect it, we could have a discussion then. And you find out who owns it and where it is, and we can talk about setbacks if we need to. But the police haven't given the indication that that's been a problem.
No, the chief and I took a ride out there to take a look at it prior to annual town meeting, and it was clearly in, on private property, in a private parking lot.
How far up the parking lot would you say it was located?
Just that the hoop was right over the edge, right on the, right above the, where the curb line comes.
So there's a chance.
So
that-
you're
there's a
saying the
chance
hoop
the
was
wire could be
Right
on
at-
the curb line?
Right.
Well, the right of way probably goes 2 to 3 feet past the curb line. So that fits his description of, we could ask if we felt it appropriate to move it off the right of way. If they wanna rotate it and use their driveway, that's fine. That is something we should feel we have the right to do. I'm not saying whether we should or not, but I do believe that, I kind of agree with Greg, it would be nice if some of the neighbors would agree, but I also could understand why a neighbor wouldn't. One is, well, that means it's gonna move down to the end of my street. And I don't want it down to my end, so I'll leave it where it's at.
Or they just
Another
don't wanna
could
get
be-
involved. Don't wanna be involved?
Or they're afraid to get involved.
Yeah. Either way.
Exactly.
No, either way is not the same answer though.
Well, they don't wanna be
Because
involved.
if they're afraid to be involved, it means somebody has influence in the neighborhood to keep people quiet.
Mhm.
Which is the same impression she's concerned about.
Mhm.
And that's not something town administration should ignore.
No.
So how do we approach that?
Well, first things first, see where the hoop lies, look at the right of way. DPW will have the road maps for probably all the roads spelled out on the state road map. We'll get an idea of the right of way, and that may take some interpretation, because it may be from the center line, it may be from one curb, depending how, that's what we found out in the poll petition we were looking at before, that it's not necessarily down the center. The road may
Right.
go different than
Over
the
time, the
right of
way it got rebuilt or redone.
It's relatively short and straight there, so probably not in that case, but we don't know. It may have gone more into one property, less into one. We don't know how they established it when it was set up and paved. But that should give us the easement, the right the town owns, how much of that is paved, which would give us a balance that's not paved. And anything even hanging over that right of way shouldn't be there. So if the hoop is hanging over the curb and the curb is part of the right of way, then it is too close, because that overhangs it. I think that from the sounds of things, that they're getting aggravated and they're getting emboldened because they've had their way so far with her, and I don't doubt that if she says she's having names called at her, that's probably the case. They're feeling very, very brave and full of themselves because the police have been on their side to this point. Looking into at least find out where the right of way is, and letting them know it can't be on the right of way might be a smart way to go. And if it is there, we can simply pick it up. Yeah, take it off the town property, bring it down to DPW until someone wants to claim it. And they could, I don't know if there's anything finable for that, for leaving things on the public way, but it's possible. And that would certainly, if you find someone a couple bucks because they're leaving something the right of way constantly, that might change your attitude. Hopefully it can be done before that, but I think there's ways we can pursue if we have to.
I think
But-
if that's the direction we choose to go, the first thing we would do is just send a letter to the resident, whether it's a tenant or not, and the landlord, so both of them are notified that the town has identified this as an issue. If we do see it overhanging the curb, the next time we will pick it up and remove it. Please have this addressed by such and such a date, and in any date after that, I agree, we could just take it and do, but we need to give them the appropriate notice.
And that's gonna
I
have
would
to.
recommend.
That's gonna have to include the actual right-of-way distance.
Yeah, we'll have to call it out and clear it,
We've
you're right.
gotta do that first before we send such a letter, and I'd be in favor of sending such a letter when we do that.
What's your thoughts?
If we did need to, if it's gonna stay, and if we wanna somehow poll the neighbors, I don't know how we go about doing that, but if people feel intimidated about coming forward about the issue, if we could send some letters to the folks that live around there if we need to get more information. And maybe we could invite the neighbors to a special meeting about it, if we get the parks people here.
That might not
If
be
it
a
comes
bad
to-
idea.
If they are intimidated, they might want to respond by letter only.
Yep.
And not
You
come
could
in.
provide a letter with multiple means of contact, and they can choose whatever means they're more comfortable in responding. And I'm okay if you put my contact info, whether it's email and my phone number that I use for town business. Whatever Dylan and Greg do or don't accept, feel free. I'm not suggesting you guys offer it. I'm just saying that I'm willing to put that into a letter. If we send a letter to everybody in the Nelson Place, Church Street, Trafalgar neighborhood, I'm willing to do that. And if anybody reaches out, I will, because maybe they want to be anonymous, and I would maintain that anonymity. So if they reach out to me, it wouldn't be like, oh, look, now I got a name, and then I'll call it out, because that's exactly not what I would do.
And the letter could include a request to notify us if they have seen anything described, behavior that's been unkind or cruel towards Mary Jane. We may get someone to confirm that doesn't want to step up and say it via letter, which, you know, if that's a behavior, it's going to stop.
Mary Jane, you have some more?
The article on the warrant, it's not as if I'm asking for something new, I'm asking for a Trafalgar Square to be added to the bylaw that is already on the books.
And I agree with
Walls
that.
out of the street. It is there because you can harass and bully me because of the position, and we are the basketball hoop is, that is the disorderly trouble that I'm having, is because the basketball hoop is there. If it wasn't there, the balls wouldn't be there, the drunkenness wouldn't be there.
And I understand your point. And I also understand that most people wouldn't even ask that to be enforced if it wasn't creating these other issues. Even if it was town-wide, and in another neighborhood, a kid was doing that on a low-traffic road, most people aren't gonna call that bylaw into play if it's not bothering anybody. But it's developed into something that's not only bothering somebody, but it seems to have created a long-term conflict between the two neighbors. I understand the point of it. There's a reason the one for the North Common went in. Well, the Upper Barre Common. I always get that reference wrong because every other place in Barre is referenced by South or High Plains. So when I think of this common, I inaccurately call it the North Common, and that's only the veteran memorial side of the common. So I apologize for
I guess, you know,
being me.
the issue that we have is, I guess, that the actions being described are public intoxication and verbal harassment, which are both illegal activities, which should be police, is a police matter. So if it's occurring, you should be contacting the police to take care of it. Doesn't stem back to the
She
basketball.
has,
But there's no
police have-
evidence.
She has,
So
and
the
she
police
hasn't.
have said they cannot act on it because they cannot find evidence to prove it. That's what I have heard from the police.
So, I would normally object to public
So,
comment
I'm just
carrying
saying,
on
how
this
do you-
much, but this to me is old business, so I don't mind getting into it, because we have discussed this before. Just want to make that clear why I participated and gone along with this for so long. It's an issue we have brought up before. I consider it old business, and
I would like to agree, we'll table this, Mary Jane. We're gonna bring it back to another meeting as an agenda item.
Can I just say one more thing?
One more thing.
When this is going on, I'm asking the neighbors who are watching the circus, they are there watching the circus, agreeing with this person that's intoxicated. And I ask them for help. The 6'4", 230-pounders and all these kind of people watching, they see, and I'm asking them for help. Can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? Nothing. We want you to move. I'll have your house condemned. We'll get you out on the street. It's gonna be my number one priority. I'm gonna get you out of here. You got 3 selectmen of the people. I need your help. 3.5 years I've asked the town for help. Mentally ill, I am not. Evil, I am not. Hate, I am not. There's crime going on down there against me and my property, and you can look the other way and you can ignore it, but that's what's happening. Something happens to me, I've asked for help from the town and from the selectmen.
I received this. I would like to make sure this is on the agenda for at least the next 2 meetings. One of those would be when we invite in the Southbury Common Committee and the Parks and Recs Committee to discuss that as an option. But I also want to maintain this as old business so we can continue to discuss and see how the town may be able to address this. We may need to add it as an agenda that brings in the police under executive session if necessary, depending on the topic and the discussion.
I agree.
So we'll table this. It will be on the agenda for at least the next 2 meetings, the first and the second meeting in September. We will continue to work on this. It's not something we can answer tonight, but we will continue to work on this. We're not ignoring your plea. We're doing what we can.
Thank you for your time. I'm sorry I wasn't on the agenda.
No,
I just
it's,
feel as though
we're
it was
getting
the
it.
agenda for
We're
3.5
moving
years.
forward. We are not ignoring you. But we just are not in a position where we can make a decision tonight that will help you.
My point is, the decision has been made by unfavorable vote.
That's a town thing, not a Board of Selectmen.
We need to
But
move
when you
on.
vote unfavorable, choose one, and it goes before the town, and the police chief, they have to go with the unfavorable,
I'd like to move on.
whether they want to or not.
I understand your position.
I live.
I'm not debating it. I'm not saying you're wrong. I appreciate it, Mary Jane. And I would request that you continue to show up as long as we keep it on the agenda. You'll have more time to express your opinion based on the discussions that come up in the future. But we have to table this item for now and continue it later.
Okay.
Yes, Sam?
You know, I've been in many planning board meetings and conservation meetings, and when there's an issue like that, they usually have a public meeting, a stipulated public meeting where all the abutters become notified, and maybe you 3 selectmen need to go down there, and I was there, I'm not sure exactly where it was, I couldn't find Mary Jane's house, but I was down Trafalgar Square, and make a decision that this basketball hoop will be put in place X. And then you're having a public meeting in support or in opposition to this. And if the people don't come to the public meeting, you have made a decision, a town-directed decision. That might be a good way to do it. Instead of, I feel badly for Mary Jane. Every year she's been going and she's been asking help, and it just seems to be getting she seems to be getting the runaround, not deliberately, but it appears that the process, she gets a runaround. So if you were to do what I suggested, go down there, make a decision, have Public Works down there, town administrator down there, and make a decision that a basketball hoop will be put in place A. We're having a public hearing to make that determination, and we're looking for positives and opposition. And if nobody comes, then you've made your decision, and we can get on from there. 3.5 years is a bit long for a citizen, a senior citizen, to be tormented by this. That's all. Thank you.
Understood. Any new public comments? All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the posted agenda item. I do appreciate you taking your time, Mary Jane, for coming before the board.
Thanks, Mary Jane.
Regional Building Inspection Agreement. I have no other questions besides that which was the calculations for the assessments per town, right?
Yeah, we just had that one.
We just cleaned up one item, it was just misrepresented one town's total.
And that was the item that we were looking at before that was not done properly.
So,
I don't think we asked for any other changes, did we?
No, that was it. Everything else was fine. We just had to clean up that assessment.
Yeah. Right. So given the change we've made to that one number, which we have recorded now.
Yep.
That the hard work assessment is $750, the other numbers stay the same for the vehicle expense. I would make a motion, we accept and endorse this contract for the Building Inspectional Services Agreement.
second?
No comment.
Do I have a second?
Oh, yeah, you have a second.
Okay.
But we need you to comment there.
The second.
I did not. I asked if I had a second.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? Call for a vote.
Aye.
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 I have hard copies upstairs. Do that at a later time.
Amendment to the EMS agreement with New Braintree.
This was something that was brought up at one meeting that I missed last year that was pending and completely had fallen off my radar until it was brought up at the last meeting. So went back and reviewed it, and the changes that were implemented in here were what was discussed at that meeting, which is basically, I'm not sure I can get them all, but we brought the base amount from 10,000 per year to 15,000 per year. We're no longer billing or back billing the town of New Braintree for signed refusals, and the Barre, it would, in the previous agreement, it was referred to as Barre EMS. It's now referred to as Barre Fire, with the new OEMS approval that they've received. And then I believe that we also, this was just one more I wanted to check. The only change, the biggest change is basically that basis for charging and billing section D. I just want to give you the exact wording. I'll take a second to review it, just want to look this up. Sorry, the track changes didn't come up with mine, but anyway, that was the only amendment.
Well, the other amendment was this first one where it says that the town of New Braintree shall not be responsible for any medical care costs provided by the town of Barre. Because what we were doing, I believe, in the past was when they had
Yeah, that was
patients that didn't pay, New
Yeah.
Braintree covered that cost, and they could pursue those people if they wanted to.
Yeah, that was
So-
the other change. That was trying to
so
figure out.
that onus is now
Yep.
gonna be on us, so that
Mhm.
our collection company has to pursue the people if they don't pay rather than New Braintree. Do you know
Correct.
what kind of impact that makes on the agreement?
That was roughly the $5,000 impact that was being translated back over to the revised assessment costs.
And traditionally, we never actually used the clause in the history because we didn't track it well enough to go back and request it. So we weren't using that clause anyway, even when we could have. We never went back to New Braintree and said, these people didn't pay. And then have them have to go to annual town meeting and
We
request
did-
additional.
They did.
We
They-
did
they-
pursue
they
pursue
paid.
them once, and after we had submitted
It was
that,
once that we did it,
It was that
okay.
once, and I think that actually that 5,000 was over a 2-year span that it was recognized. So we didn't go after it once, went back. It was over 2 years.
Okay.
It was about 5,000. So it's really about 3,000 a
So
year.
to clear it up, we've taken that ambiguity out of it. They're trying to keep track of that and gone to one set flat fee and has moved on from there. And
Correct.
if we have people that don't pay, just like they would in anyone else for the Barre Fire Department, we have a collection company that does pursue that already.
Correct.
And we
And our
just-
selections is better with the newer company since we
Right, so
switched over a few years
that
ago.
way, that's the last thing that we
Yep.
we just want to address so everyone understands what the changes
Yeah,
are.
that was
we made.
that was the clause I was looking for.
That was the last one I thought.
That
I was trying to find where it
tickling-
was
that
too.
was something tickling in the back of my head too.
I knew what it
yeah.
was, I just didn't know where it was, that's
Yeah.
why I had to look and find it, but, okay, so
I think it makes it a more efficient agreement anyway. Simpler, easier,
well,
and works for both parties.
my discussion, this was to point out what the changes were so people understand. Beyond that, since it once again falls under the purview of the fire department, I will not act on it. I just want to make sure everybody understands what was in it.
No, and I
And
appreciate
that was
it.
the point of my discussion on it.
And that's why you discussing it is not a conflict. It's just a perspective and a point of view that anybody in the town could have stepped up and just made note of, and we would have accepted
I
it.
did not create or share in any creation of this document, I was just
No, and I
explaining
appreciate
it.
your
clearly.
being open and letting everybody know. I'll make a motion to accept the new terms of the Town of Barre and New Braintree Memorandum of Agreement for Ambulance Services for the Town of New Braintree.
I will second that.
Call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
That's the one to sign?
Yeah, send it one, please.
Okay. Let's start with the next one being, this would be the very small business guide and other things that may be on the general topic.
Well, it took us an hour and a quarter to get to you, not bad.
It's my job to watch accountancy for our patients. So, I'm just gonna talk briefly about the set of documents I constructed, in service to both soon-to-be entrepreneurs and folks that are currently in operation, members of the, the Quabbin business community, but also the business community of Barre in particular. I've altered these documents and made them especially germane to folks from Barre. So I constructed these three. The first is pretty straightforward. It's a simple startup guide for those that would like to become entrepreneurs. It's literally a 1 through 10 steps in order to get everything above board, to comply and obey the process. And to let, just as if you're interested in pursuing this sort of thing, this is what the steps would be. It's very much an introductory, expository to the process. And that really leads on to document 2, which is this larger, more substantial document here. This is the small business guide that's mentioned. It goes through, the idea is that it's supposed to answer every single possible question that you could have in regards to how can I get my business to comply with the town? How can I make sure that everything here is in compliance? And what businesses, for example, need a common victualer's license? What isn't a common victualer's license? Which businesses would need a meeting with the Board of Health? Why is that germane to me? All these seemingly simple questions are contained inside this document. This is also available as an active PDF. So everything here that's linked, you just click on that, will bring you to the link in question. So for example, if there's a link to the Mass Office of Business Development, if it's underlined, you can click on that PDF and it'll send you right to that relevant link.
Okay.
So everything here is completely intelligent, as is this initial pamphlet here. So all the links are there. And on
So
top-
these are something that we now have on our website?
Correct, yep.
I do recall you sending some email notification about that.
And
What,
he was
even
kind enough
Facebook?
to post this
Put it on Facebook too. Yep.
Yeah, he was kind enough to post this on, thank you. And on top of that, for those businesses that are already in operation but need a bit of help, in terms of funding or extension and things like that, I have a separate list here, which is a Mass Small Business Development listing. This is like a resource list. It covers contact information, the addresses, websites, everything related to what these programs do. For example, Mass Business Works versus Mass Development. They have some overlap, but they do some things better or differently than each other. This helps cover that. These are largely state resources, but closer to the end I have some federal resources too, as well as private nonprofit and community development organizations. There's also a link to the Mass Association of CDCs, which is an amazingly helpful resource, as well as, of course, USDA Rural Development and their economic development programs like this too. So the idea is, between these three documents, if you just have a really good idea and you want to get your feet wet and becoming an entrepreneur, by following these three documents, you're really well on your way to getting things going. At least if nothing else, being in full compliance with the state and the town, so that way you're not going to put a toe out of line and just getting yourself in trouble. Additionally, I was going to consider doing one, what are the benefits of having an LLC versus just having your own business certificate? Like if I want to operate as a sole proprietor, what behooves me to become an LLC? What protection does that give me if this LLC only has one owner versus two?
What do I
Things like
gain? What do I lose?
Exactly, very much, the idea is to mitigate risk and clarify uncertainty. That's really what I'm trying to do here. I've made similar documents that are also more germane to like Hubbardston, which has the more north-central angle going at, like the Gardner, Fitchburg, Leominster area. They have a very vibrant chamber of commerce there too. So, for example, I tweaked this similar document for them. So each one of these documents is really tailor-fit to each of the 5 communities that we have. That's the idea. Again, thank you, Andrew, for popping these on the website. The PDFs also are very helpful to go through. As I said, they're all interactive. You can just click and explore at your leisure. That's really, really quite nice. But if you have anything else or any questions, I'd love to answer.
First question.
Sure.
All of this stuff produced,
Yes.
greatly appreciated.
You're very, very well.
And I mean that like sincerely.
As do I.
Now the follow-up question
Sure.
is, I guess, who would technically be the owner of these documents? So that we know who can share and who can't share and who can, that's all I'm saying. I want to just be honest and upfront about that.
The way I see it is I constructed these documents for the public good. So by definition, to me, these are Barry's documents. The ones that
Okay.
I make for Hubbardston's would be Hubbardston's. The ones that I make for OCAM's. I make these as a service to you guys.
Okay.
And I enjoy doing it. This is one of my favorite parts of the job.
And I really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
I just figured I'd just get that clear.
And also, I'll make sure to give you guys, these are all password protected documents. So if anyone has Adobe Acrobat, they might want to edit these. I have these password protected. I will provide the password for unlocking. So that way, if we need to update these and we have a different economic development coordinator or director, they will be able to update these without having to start from scratch.
Gotcha.
Because this took quite a bit of time to assemble, and there's no reason to repeat efforts. It doesn't make any sense. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very
Appreciate
welcome.
that.
Anytime. So,
When the time comes, share that
Oh, yeah,
password stuff with
certainly.
him.
Of course, of course. But
Have we, as a town or you as representing the regional
Yeah.
economic development, reached out to the Barre community of business to see if they want copies and if they're using them or want to play a role?
When I first started my previous year, one of the first things I did was have a meeting with the BCB, and I let them know what I was going to be working on. I have every single member of the BCB on Quabbin Country, for example.
Yeah.
These are all designed to work as a suite. They're designed to work together.
Yeah.
So they're aware of these, though I haven't disseminated anything as far as at the administrative level. to
Okay.
them. I would love to do that, but this is very much a document for the municipality rather than for the BCB.
Right.
You know, so these are very much tailored for that. But I'd be more than willing to have them sit in and give their 2 or 3 or 5 cents, whatever it be. So
More for me, it would just be what I'm thinking.
Mhm.
Again, I have no clue if they'd even be interested or if everybody else agrees. You know, I'm just saying this is an initial thought.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to anybody. is if we wanted to present to them and see if they wanted to be part of an arm to assist with using these documents for potential new businesses. In other words, you're very helpful. You've created this, but there's one of you for 5 towns. So you can't be the person that everybody calls and say, so how do I use this? What does it mean?
That's currently what it's been.
Right, but to really make a boom out of, or a boon out of this,
Yeah.
it's finding those people that may have walked this walk
Yeah.
and then can pass this on, and that would be people that are part of like the
Boots on the ground,
the
exactly.
business community of Barre saying, yep, that's why I went this way, that's why I went that way. You may read on this, it says do an LLC, but I realize for me, sole proprietor is the right way,
Yeah.
and this is why. You know, that's all I meant, more of a, just an arm that will eventually help us when we really try to say, bring new business to Barre. They can help and spread the word of, and not only that, go to the website, they got all this stuff. And that might, you know,
Yeah, these are designed to help supplement both existing businesses like entrepreneurs that want to expand or really kind of, really that plan that they've been meaning to do, but it's largely been kind of esoteric. This is a way, okay, here's the path to make it real. And if you wanted to do it, not only do you have these, you have my office to help and the BCB, you have other folks that want to bring you on board and help this become reality. That's really what the entire process is. But if you have any questions, just feel free to call me at any time, of course. Yeah.
but I really appreciate this. You guys have more.
It's really, really good.
This
Really
is
good. I think
awesome.
this would be
And,
helpful for people.
People would really be shocked. It's not that much to do. Every time I think that I have the entire suite of assistance organizations mapped out, I am always, and I have a pretty good mind, I'm always surprised at what help is actually out there. There's so many low-cost loan programs or incentives or grants. It's really remarkable. And the folks listed on this business resource inventory, there's some amazing world-class help here. And all it takes is a good idea, a little bit of stick-to-itiveness, and this can really become something great.
Do you plan on updating this on a rolling basis?
Oh yeah. Especially, I made sure not to have anything that's too time sensitive. Like the process here, if there was something changed at the legislative level, of course, that would be reflected upon the time that I'm here. This is very much a living document. It's not set in stone then to be forgotten about. These are going to have my consistent attention, and I hope they're used long into the future because they're very, very helpful.
Thank you.
Again, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm very hungry. As I usually am this time of night. So I'm going to go head home and get some food.
Before you run, anybody have a question for him before? Well, thank you very much, Todd. I appreciate the effort
Forever and always.
and the time.
Sir.
Food sounds good, I'm jealous.
Oh my gosh,
And extend a thank you to Hardwick for pretty much initiating this whole thing and then helping us as 5 towns continue it.
Well,
So,
it's for better or worse, it's all for.
there you go. We'll start with a thank you. We'll blame them later.
Wise counsel.
Thanks,
You guys have a
Todd.
great night.
You too, thank you.
See you, Tim.
Have a good one.
Okay, boom, boom. Fire Station Building Committee.
So as I should put in my report for this week, I think that now looking at where we are with futuristic debt roll-off, now is a good time to start looking at our plan of action for upgrading our fire facilities. It's been something that we've kind of kicked around for a number of years, and I think ever since I walked in the door, it's always been identified as a need. But hasn't been really clear what direction we really want to head on it. We've had a bunch of ideas as far as we want to go, but I think it's about time that we start narrowing down where we really do want to go. I think the first, just at least looking back at the feasibility that was done back in 2002, they had what was basically 3 proposals. One was a fully integrated public safety building at a spot that wasn't really known, but a facility that would have all the different functions in it. and they didn't really have a firm price on it because they didn't know where it was gonna go. They also had the construction of a new Station 1 and a new Station 2, and I think that they also had like a substation plan built in there too. But looking at the plans they had set out for Station 1 and Station 2 at the time, if we use the 3% cost, it was initially estimated to be for Station 1 about 3.7 million for Station 1 and 1.7 million for Station 2. At 3% escalation, it would put it at about a $5.6 million facility for Station 1 and a $3.1 million cost to rebuild Station 2 using what was developed in that feasibility study. Considering a lot's changed since that feasibility study's done, and maybe a lot of some other factors that could be considered, like a Morton type building versus a two-story structure. I think that it would be a good first step to, for one, establish a fire station building committee to oversee the possibilities of where it could go, but then also commit to appropriating some funds at the next annual town meeting to go toward a feasibility study that these guys could then help guide and draft a document, and then from there set a timeline out that when our debt falls off, targeting specifically the common project, we could try to replace that debt with the funding for a new station. Whether that be one station or both stations, or one new station and upgrades to another, that could be something identified in the feasibility study.
So first step is creating a fire station building committee
Correct.
and identifying the specific charge given them.
Correct.
And you're suggesting this funding for feasibility study would be something rolled into the FY21 budget?
Correct. Probably taken from free cash.
Just another, I don't want to say big ticket, but potentially ticket item that's coming up is 2024, the 250-year anniversary.
Correct.
That's going to be something that we've also talked requiring long-term planning, and we've barely nibbled at getting a group together to do that. I don't think we ever developed a real charge. I know Charlie brought it up a few times.
We have a do of a charge.
We
just
did
don't have
create the
anybody
charge?
assigned. We don't have anybody appointed to the committee.
Okay. I think we need to republicize that one as a side. But I'm willing to accept a draft charge for us to review and maybe mark up if we think Dylan and I would also recommend Greg, as a member of the Board of Selectmen, should have a voice despite being an on-call firefighter. This is creating a committee, not necessarily being on the committee or presenting something to the board as, I don't see a conflict of interest for his participation in the discussion and development of the charge. And he has every right to back out. I'm just saying, as a board, I don't see a true conflict with him talking about and possibly being involved in the creation of the charge for the committee. Because it's really deferring the final decisions or recommendations to the committee anyway. We would have to ask it to come back, and at that point, maybe he would defer to the final recommendation and say, I won't vote on the final recommendation.
Given the one interaction I've had talking to the ethics on it, literally anything under the purview of the fire department, I just won't get involved in it.
Good enough. I mean, that's,
I
just wanted to.
I have what I think would be a lot of valid input for it, and I think I know what a lot of the guys would like to see, what the department needs are, but I just, the way the rules really state that if the public could have a perception that I may get some benefit from the chief because of my active participation in the pursuit of a new facility, which obviously would please the chief. All it needs to have is public perception that I may get a benefit, and it's a violation of the ethics. So I just can't, unfortunately, get involved in it.
Understood. Okay. So we have openly discussed that, so people understand the situation. So with that then, Dylan, do you have any other thoughts? Would you like him to just draft an initial charge for us to review, and then maybe you can add more, take more away? This charge might be something we want to break out into phases of get this far and then report back to us, and then take next steps and it might be the first step is tell us where you want to look. Do you want to use the parking lot near Rice Park? Do you want to use the exact site it's on, find a temporary location for equipment until it's built, and then go right back to where you're already at? Or, let the committee come up with it. I mean, I know I have my own thoughts, but that's why we're creating a committee. I can't put enough time in to break it all down, and I'm not a firefighter, so I'm sure there's nuance I just won't understand.
That's part of the fortune of having Andrew as our administrator for this, is he is a firefighter in a different town.
Yeah, but I don't count him.
He does, but it does have that.
He's only middle management.
He does have that helpful insight because of that. So those some of the things anything I could add, he could add the same comments and knowledge to it.
Yeah.
And I know he's gone to all the different town departments and met the people and the personnel in the stations, and I have the utmost confidence in his ability to look into it and to form a good charge for it. So,
Yeah. I would like Andrew to come up with a first draft of the charge.
and if
I look forward to,
Make a motion to request Andrew to draft a charge for the committee. How much time do you think it would take for you to get that turned around?
Hopefully I'll have it drafted to you by next meeting.
All right, so at the next meeting.
and I second that motion.
Call for a vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'll vote to form the
Have a good
committee,
one,
we can
Ellie.
do it, but-
Thank you for spending the time listening to us droll and ramble on. Okay. We'll get that going. Just because it's on my mind, I'll probably forget otherwise. I'd like to put on the agenda. Doesn't have to be the next meeting. We'll see how crowded the agenda gets. The discussion of filling that 250 anniversary committee with people. And I also kind of want to roll that into, and I think we've tentatively talked about it in the past, whether the town could use even a part-time, like event coordinator or something to help with. And I'll explain in a minute a little bit more of that, because that role could not only be that, but it could be something that literally part-time. So we're saying maybe come in once or twice a week tops. Maybe it's a 4-hour shift every Tuesday afternoon. Where not only that, but they could also be someone that helps on the economic development side, where just because we have these things, somebody could come in with this and say, do you know enough to help me take next steps? Like, where do I go? Why would I ask this agency? What do I even ask this agency help for?
Are you talking about a paid position?
Yeah, part-timer though, so like we're talking about.
I don't want to clarify that.
Right, but a paid position, and I don't know, we'll add into the discussion, so let's not, I apologize. I'm talking about an agenda item to come, is what are we using that old police corner for? Have we decided anything? Because I recall talking, but we never did any final decision.
The long-term plan that this thought that I have on that is that the town clerk's office should come up from the basement to go into that space. The reason why it's gonna be a lot more technical than what we did with the treasure collector side is because you have a significant amount of demolition that needs to be done on that side. But also, she has a number of records retention and vault issues that need to be addressed on the first floor. So it's a little bit more involved than just, oh, hey, we're gonna put a desk in the office and boom, there you go. But I think that we need to look at kind of like how much it would really be to do. I'm thinking that you're talking about a significant project and trying to get that done.
Yeah.
I think that most of the records that they are archived and they're on computer database now, so they're not necessarily running to get into the vault as often as you might think. So maybe there's a way that they can still keep the vault
Right, and maybe
down
it's just
and
a-
have an occasional visit place and not have to relocate those things.
Yeah, and it could be a matter of having a smaller vault that, you know, is able to fit up there that is just from, you know, pick a year forward. That's gonna be the records that she's actually gonna go after versus the long-term storage records, but that's something that.
Something that she rolls over annually that's current,
Right.
that's getting used, gonna be used, and use the other. That's certainly a good possibility.
I know
Probably
one-
don't need a lot of space for that either.
Right, one of her capital requests that she's rolled over for a few years has been a digital records retention system. But the estimated cost on that was about $60,000. And obviously, that's more on the want side than the need side, so we end up, but if we're looking at moving it upstairs, that could be something that
I
we roll
think-
into the total cost.
I think that's something that it's gotta become a need. We're getting to this day and age, and we have to revisit, by the way, internet for the town, because we haven't discussed this for a while. For people not to have internet and to not have things accessed digitally is, we don't have a lot of excuse at this point. So I think that needs to step up on our list too for the next meeting. And that needs to be something that she needs to have.
And I do have all
We've
the
gotta
costs.
digitize everything.
And as far as that goes, I do have all the costs related to that charter gave for running all the cable to all the unserviced areas, so. Just for
Okay,
your
what I would like
consideration.
to do then is we'll just make note of an agenda item for,
Cable.
started with the events slash, 250 anniversary.
Mhm.
Next was town clerk relocation. I'm just saying my first thing turned into 3 different items. And then cable internet is another one that
And
we
you had
should
your-
just add to the next meeting or the meeting after.
And you start with your part-time events planner, right?
Yeah, the events planner was kind of rolled into that 250 anniversary, because I thought maybe if nobody's applying to it, we may have to appoint someone to that committee that is a current employee. Sorry, we may have to reach out and see and actually start asking our employees if you would do this or if you would do that, and then we'd have to find out. Within job descriptions, I understand we can't just, you will do this, that doesn't work in municipal law. Gets close, but I think we crossed our minimum or maximum members of our community that allows us to be exempt of full job description rules and regs. So we gotta be careful. But, so that's the 3 things I would just like to make sure we pay attention to coming up. I'll make note and try to reach out in an email also, just say, let's keep on top of this. Because I agree there are things we can't let sit for too long. Internet being one of them as well, I think is
All
important.
right, and can you throw on another topic, the digitize things for our records?
Yes.
I really think that's, I have been listening to her say that we really have to, we've got to address that.
Yes, and I'll add
Before
to
it
the digital
becomes-
records.
Yeah, before it becomes a real.
Meeting minutes being available digitally. Because a lot of times it just says they can be found at the town clerk, even on that third-party website thing that all the towns are using for meetings. A lot of them still just say, not available here. At some point, I think I'm gonna request that we create a policy that shows a timely update so that those things are, like, I appreciated the way we were able to get August 5th meeting minutes to us and get this going, because now that has been approved, it literally is something that we could have scanned and put on that website by next meeting. So people now have it quick, like I would like within 30 days of a meeting, all our meeting minutes make it to that for the permanent record, assuming that of course we get the drafts and we approve them.
Right, approve next meeting, get on
But-
before the next, that's.
At a minimum, I wouldn't want to go more than like 2 meetings. So if it's a Parks and Recs that meets once a month, you don't wanna see something that takes more than 60 days to get those meeting minutes on the web. So I'd like to see how we can, so we'll add that as a topic. So I just wanted to present my agenda item, but I don't really, I agree I shouldn't go too deep into it. So, we did the fire station committee. I guess the next item is the special events bylaw. Have we made more progress? Did I miss something on that?
No, I kind of want to just keep that one in rotation. We don't need to discuss it tonight, but we had talked about at least having it on the agenda monthly. But
Yeah.
we talked about it last meeting, so we can just hold that for later.
Unless you have more to add, Greg, I'd agree to table it for now.
No, nothing different.
Financial policies and procedures. I'll
So-
let you present it, Andrew.
Yeah, so
Yeah, it was the
So you
100
remember about a
pages
year
in an
ago,
email.
we had, or yeah, it was almost a year ago, DLS awarded us a best practices policy on upgrading our financial policies and procedures to try to help us move toward a more solid foundation as far as what we were doing for financial forecasting, you know, our OPEB liabilities, our investments, our debt management, just something to have on paper that we can follow as a guide. They took a lot of our, what we did as current practice, put it on paper, suggested some tweaks and some things that we should consider. At the beginning of July, they presented what they considered a final document to us. We then met as a financial team between myself, the town accountant, treasurer, and an assessor, went through everything, figured out what was actually achievable, what we felt was way too much of an ask, and what they were putting down on paper that didn't really follow what we had as internal, as we had like an internal process. So we presented those tweaks, and I think I sent them out as red line changes from what DLS originally put forward, and we feel comfortable in presenting the financial policies and procedures as presented to you guys.
Do you have any comments at this moment?
I have only gone through about the first 12 pages so far, so I'd like some more time to finish, because I do want to go through the entire 100-page document before I comment on anything else. But I'm glad to see it's done, and given the issues we had in the past with free cash being upheld and things, I think it's good to have policies and procedures that we've said this in the past, that everybody understands up front. That means it's easy to expect someone to make a benchmark where they know where the mark is and it's not moving. So well done. I think it's going to be very beneficial for us, I think.
I would like a little more time as well to go over it. A lot to it.
Okay.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. I'd recommend then we table it.
Yep.
And we'll continue to review and bring it up. Let's just bring it up as old business at each subsequent meeting until we're all agreed that we're good to go. Because I do think it might take a couple meetings to even really dig through it,
We
talk
might-
about it, break
Maybe
it
we
up.
could break it up as separate, because I know that there's a number of different policies and procedures. Maybe we can attack three per meeting.
That's what I was going to say. We might just start picking off the first few and say, well, we'll go through these first sections, the first so many pages, and first so many policies. Kind of like a study. We'll get these first pieces done that we can hash over that portion, rather than try to go through the whole document. That would be one cumbersome meeting. But if we took a couple pieces every time, we could get through it. It's going to take us a couple months, but that's okay. We'd get through it efficiently, and
Yeah.
we'd all digest it better, as would anybody paying attention. So.
One of the policies that was on there that we decided to hold off for now was one on cost allocations, and it was in the red line version. It's crossed out, but it's mainly for looking into futuristically at the enterprise funding, and could be used as a template to say, here's how we can establish a more equitable cost comparison, to say that, rather than just, because right now, because we worked toward like splitting the DPW director's salary in the last one. We already had the administrative salary split out, and the insurances and stuff have always been split out. but it kind of goes more into actual splitting of the cost of services done, where right now it's really just a $7,500 line item. It kind of goes into ways to look at really breaking down the costs between services the town provides and services that the enterprises provides back, and seeing if you could establish a more equitable cost agreement.
This sounds similar to me asking to bill all of our town buildings for water and sewer.
Right.
As we haven't broken down those expenses
Mhm.
before, so I like that idea. I can't, I
To
think
do it
it's,
accurately, though, you're getting into a mess.
well,
But
Well, the
that-
entire
that's-
highway department does all the digging for both sewer and water, and we're not counting every hour and all the piece of equipment that we pay for highway equipment for
but
them.
it's not that hard to log when they do a job, they do a job that they've gone in, there's gonna be a materials list for what he bought, and there's gonna be overtime and hours they put towards a project, and it's not too difficult to have a slip for that, and just keep track of it, and find out what we are paying for, that the enterprise should pay for. Including if we are worried, now we're not paying for the water sewer that we should pay for it. And that should be symbiotic, but we wanna make sure it's equal. We don't wanna be taking, $50,000 of water sewer and only giving them $20,000 of effort back, or vice versa. We need to get that equal. The enterprise is supposed to, be self-sustaining.
No, I get you.
And we're still muddied more than we should be for that to be a true enterprise fund, I think.
I got you.
I mean, that's, we have at least in draft form that we can go back and revisit, I think, after we get the solid policies and procedures done, and then look back and say, all right, in 3 years, we can.
Yeah, we don't need
2
to
years,
clean it
3
up
years,
now, but
we
it
can-
it should get cleaned up. I'd like more than 3 years.
Well, I'm
Less
just-
than
yeah,
3 years,
right,
but I'm
right.
saying, go through what we have first and then maybe work on that after, because that's gonna take some thought, as you said, it's a little cumbersome. But there's gotta be a way to document, events, simply enough. He knows what he puts down, how many guys, how many hours, it's a man-hour calculation is easy. The equipment costs, put a certain hourly rate towards a machine when it goes someplace. That's easy enough. You can look at the life of the machine, the value of the machine, the maintenance of the machine, and you get a rough hourly value of the machine. It's not that hard. Once you come up with it, you can just allocate it towards any project. So if you're digging up a water main and replacing it, you get the hours, you get the material, and you get the machine. It's done. And
So that'll be after we go through all the rest of it.
right, and we don't, and we don't need to do it and bill it, we just need to do it and track it, so we can, then when we have this for 6 months or a year, we can look at all these numbers, then we can do something to digest those and figure out what we should do different. And so we gotta start tracking it to, if we're gonna do it right later, I think it's important.
Okay. So we will table this, but continue to review and be prepared to try to pick at it.
And maybe put it, like I said,
A
old
meeting
business.
here and there, yeah.
Try to get through a couple of policies, a couple of pages next meeting would be nice, and so hopefully we're all ready to go discuss some portion of it.
I may need to, because depends, how policies can be sometimes. You gotta be careful that you don't review the first couple chapters and then realize chapter 10 feeds back to chapter 1 and we missed. So we may have to continue that where, we thought we were done with chapter 1 and now we see that chapter 10 does refer and we gotta double check.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll plan to put the first 3 policies
Some
on the
on the
agenda,
screen
just
that
to
they
say
went
we can
down
go
for.
through them page by
Couldn't
page.
save a wasp or a cricket.
And go from there.
Gotcha.
Looks like a little beetle there, maybe.
No, not anymore. Cricket. Crickets. Crickets. I'm not crazy, I saw something over there. Welcome to Barre.
He's right. I'm not just saying it because he's a fellow selectman. He's not crazy.
Other times.
I'm just I'm real. All right, so next would be Bonefrog at Stone Cow Brewery.
Gotta say, either they printed up an old header, they did a good job and they were disciplined, they had this tucked away in their filing cabinet, or we have it wrong having Faye listed as our
Yeah,
assistant.
it's an old one.
Okay.
That's right. So
Oh, they're using an old
so
copy,
they,
you're saying?
they're obviously
They
disciplined.
just
but
asked whether or not it was this, if we had the same, if we had any
They must
changes
keep
to it.
these on file, and they just pulled it out of their file. It's impressive they have all that stuff tucked away like that.
Yeah.
So they could just,
I got that from planning board today.
this? 'Cause I didn't
Well, no, it was
know.
just they, when Bonefrog filled it out, they used.
Oh.
They obviously had
An
it
old
saved.
template.
the old-
Okay.
They
the old
had it
template.
saved in their folder somewhere, they pulled it out. Barry, they pull it out and they go, they
And
don't.
you know what, I never noticed it when I made copies for you today.
I actually
I noticed
read
that.
this
I
junk
think I
once
saw
in
an
a
old
while.
one a few months
just,
ago that still referred to the town administrator as Heather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was someone else that pulled an old,
Yeah,
whether it was
they pulled the
use
old
of
stuff
town
in.
property or something, I remember came through and it happens, but I agree as long as,
Yeah, I think they did, any changes? We were just thinking about the contact information at the
Yeah.
bottom, but no, we didn't change anything.
in the future, yeah, we change stuff.
Yeah, here's the revised copy.
Okay, so this came in on the 19th? That was the-
Well, that's
yes.
when I got it
Circle of
today.
Songs
just got
got
They
the same
have-
one.
Yeah, she does that every year.
So you may wanna double check what do you have out there, cause Circle of Songs special event sheet also says Fay.
Okay, I printed that one, and you know what, I never even looked at that. I never even gone down look.
We just may need to double check, just,
Well, these people are pulling up something out of their records, so.
not a big deal. Maybe we accidentally left the wrong one on the website or something.
No, I'll go in tomorrow and I'll go in and
There's-
check.
there's a
it.
simple
Yeah,
solution.
Joe's Journey also does, so all three of the
There's
ones.
a simple solution. In the future, when someone say, has the permit changed? Yes, please pull the new permit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And that'll
Again,
clear it
this
up.
isn't, a
Just
beat
say,
up,
yes,
it's
it's
just a
changed.
clarify fix.
It doesn't really matter. It's not affecting anything, but it's,
It only affects it if they make the mistake of, well, I don't know. Did you map that email address to go to Sandy, even though it had her name on it? Cause I forget
yeah,
how they do that
yeah, if they
stuff.
send anything to that email address, it's the, she'll get it.
Yeah, okay.
I get it, but it still shows Fay, I
It's just,
don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, my email every once in a while still pops up as if you're Fay, and I'm like, what?
really?
it's a.
Well, it's the way it remembers it. It's like,
What I
can
don't
look
see,
up
and we should
Sandy
add to
Hood, and
this,
then I'll see Sandy
is
Hood.
there is no application
And below it, I'll
date.
see I could choose Fay, and then below that I could see,
Okay,
you know,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
so I don't know when they filled this out.
They did send it
So,
digitally.
but my concern for the application is, you know what I always say is, why haven't these departments responded yet? And I don't know if they've had a chance to see it or how long it's been out.
That's why I wrote, from planning board, I put underneath it.
Right.
Just that's why that date is there.
Yeah, that's when we received
I got
it
it from them
today.
yeah.
I'm saying, we don't know their application. There's no place on this form for them to say application date or today's date when they fill it out. We don't have that. So we oughta-
Officially, we are the department they have to submit it to, so August 19th is the official first date of receipt.
No, she received it from the planning
She
board.
received
It's
this
already-
copy from the planning board. We
Why
actually,
does the planning board get it before us?
we received it by email and I forwarded it off by email to the other
So-
departments and I asked for.
So it came into the
comment
office
back,
like it should, and he
so-
mailed that.
We
Yes,
need
'cause I
to
just
print
came
it out
back.
the day we receive it and stamp it with the date we received it.
I just got back from vacation, so.
And I'm just saying
No,
we
but-
need to think
but
about
that's why
that in
I'm
the
saying,
future is,
something for,
did we receive this
It,
prior
it,
to
it
today,
helps them,
Amber?
it helps them too,
Okay,
so
all right,
it
thank
helps them too, so we're not saying, oh geez, you know, we'll wait a week and give people more time, they might have already had a week or two, I don't know. So whether there's a date attached to it, or we get the actual date that we, receive it by email, or maybe I don't wanna say print it out and take a solid copy around, cause that's a pain in the tush. I'm sure you have the email, the time and the date on it, that anyway, so.
Yeah.
That's all I'm looking for, is
It
that
was
we,
received last Tuesday, immediately sent out to the department heads for comment.
okay, so they've had it a week, so we can give a little more time for the planning board to comment and the, who else hadn't commented?
Okay, and they
Board of
wrote
Health.
on, there's a comment on there that Mary Ann wrote. That they need to get the.
Need a course
There was-
plan, and they said it's
right.
pending, right?
Right, we received that on Tuesday, or forwarded that off to them, so, anyway.
And the
we
planning
received
board
within
hasn't
the
met
last
yet.
week, they still have a month, we have plenty of time to improve this. I just wanna get it in front of you guys
Yeah,
because.
no, I appreciate how quick it's
I
going.
would
like that.
remind them though in the email, the 60-day,
Yeah.
they're supposed to submit it to the town 60 days before the event, so we don't feel like we're racing to get it to every board. To help them out, because our boards don't meet every week.
Right.
And the planning board's not meeting tomorrow, so now they're pushed into September to meet and discuss this.
Mhm.
They're meeting September third.
Right, but they shouldn't think, oh, I've only got 2.5 weeks left for this event, do I have to rush my decision?
And if they have an issue they want addressed.
That's all I mean.
And then they address the issue, they're gonna wait till the next meeting to come review it, it may be too late. So the 60 days is as quickly as we go. I didn't like the before, it was taking us 60 days plus to get this stuff all signed off on. Now at least we're getting the sign-offs done quickly, but the idea of 60 days is so we can have it back and forth. If they have an issue they want addressed, it gives these guys a chance to address the issue and have it reviewed without making special meetings and special trips to do it.
And
But
don't
it's
get me
getting
wrong, but
much
they've been
better.
advertising it on Facebook for almost a year. So they didn't have to wait till now to submit it. They could have
They-
submitted
a
it
year
a
ago.
month or 2 months ago, or easily.
A year ago.
So if we just remind them, we would appreciate if you submitted 60 days before your next event.
At least.
It makes our lives easier, and you're less likely to have an upset
Right.
committee member that decides to make a point of it.
Maybe by the next time that they submit, we'll actually have a bylaw.
So let's put this on the next,
That's possible.
table this for now till the planning board gets a chance to look at it.
Mhm.
I don't like provisional accepting of things, you know
That's
that.
fine.
So, yep, I'm good with that.
Thank you.
I'm guessing this will, once the course plan goes through, do we need to forward that? Oh, that's conservation that made that note, not planning, okay. Thank you. Okay. That was just a table thing, right? We'll wait for other departments to tell us yea or nay, is that what you recommend?
Yes. Give them an opportunity to see it since it's only been a week.
So we have it says use of town property. I just want to clarify because there's 2 forms involved. Is this use of town property and a special event request? Because both forms are included.
It should only be a use of town property, they haven't.
Because
They only,
they say there will be food. And I guess because it's open to the public
it's
and
one
there's
of
a
those.
potential of 60, I don't know.
It's one of those issues that it's like, we
This
don't have we don't have a.
We don't have a policy.
we don't
This
have a
fits the
policy.
gray area, they submitted it just to make sure.
Right.
Right.
I don't think we have any concerns for the Circle of Song probably giving out cookies and juice in the town hall. And 60 people up there is not a reasonable number for that building or for the parking, any impact. So I personally am not looking for a special permit on it, and I wouldn't expect it here. But this is why we're gonna discuss this later and get down to this.
Back to the whole, we
Like
don't
Fel-
have a
Felton Field.
clarified bylaw that explains it.
Felton Field has uses and things they can do without a special permit necessarily, or do we still get the special permit, but we don't have authority down there? We
Gotcha.
that's a whole big gray area, because they run their own place down there, but Felton Field should have rules. You know, maybe if we're gonna say events at Felton Field need a special permit, and they go through the Felton Field committee with it instead of us.
Gotcha.
Lots to talk about, we'll get there.
In this regard, I would just like to suggest that the board only reviews it as a use of town property, not a
Mhm.
special event.
That's.
And as a precedent, one of the reasons I would state that the use of town property, specifically town hall, does not require a special event is if all the activities are occurring within town hall, within the building, it doesn't require a special permit,
Or the
a special event permit,
The
because
sidewalk-
it's,
sidewalk
it's a
entry
building
there.
of assembly anyway.
I would
So-
also include the entry to the building.
Just to, for the record, we'll just make for the precedent, no one using town hall needs to request a special event permit as long as all the activities occurring are within the building.
But, well, I'd also say the front foyer too, because sometimes people might set up a check-in table or something up front coming into it, or that.
I'll give you that, but they just can't have
Right,
music and
yeah, it
everything
can't
sitting
come-
out
right,
front,
no
so I
event-
don't count the
no
table there.
event. Yeah, but I'm saying no event outside, but
Right,
But it doesn't
as
mean
long
you
as
can't.
it's
Okay.
that, then I wouldn't ever ask anybody to
I
provide a special
agree.
event.
So with that in mind, I would make a motion that we accept Circle of Songs' request for use of town property on the 21st. It says Thursday, the 19th for rehearsal and the 21st for their concert.
I would second that request.
Call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
And I assume that's one fee, not 2 fees for 2 days,
Correct. One fee.
making clear of that for them.
Correct. That only leaves on the agenda left the excess property list.
And the town
So
administrator.
speaking of cleaning out the first floor to try to reuse that area. So this is all the remaining furniture and equipment that is laying around in both the police department area over here on the first floor and in the storage area downstairs. I have not gained access into a small storage closet that's over on this side. A little assistance for the fire department on that, but
Oh, is that a,
it was old police storage, but I don't have a key anymore, so.
We don't need
Just
no
gotta force that door a
stinking
little
key.
bit. Just gotta force the door.
You know you don't need a key.
Yeah.
Have you checked, I always ask the same, have you checked other town departments if they're interested in any of these items before we move on?
Yes, so we've kind of exhausted all avenues as far as all of this stuff, and this is basically what's left that nobody wants.
Okay.
and your intent is to post them on Municipal, something like that?
Yep. Dispose of them, get the best bang for our buck for all of it. Except for probably the towers, I'll probably have those destroyed. So I might have,
Right.
Are you
hard
able
drives.
to take pictures of all these?
Yep.
So that they can also be posted on our website?
Yep.
As they're posted in Municipal, we can
Mhm.
post them on the website, and
Yes.
the end of bidding, if nobody bids, something like that, then it just is like, come take it, you have 4 days before we bring it to the transfer station.
Pretty much.
Sure. Well, I make a motion to approve Andrew disposing of the items in this excess property list via municipal or destroying of things as he sees appropriate.
I second that motion.
Any further discussion? Call for vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
I could use a few of these things, actually.
Well, get yourself signed
That's
in
why I'm just
municipal.
waiting, get through that Municipal, let me see what comes through, what doesn't. I'll be outside on the sidewalk as you're trying to load stuff in the trash
I'll take that.
truck, I'll be like, that can go in the red truck to the left. Anyway. So, we're down to, Selectmen reports. You have anything, sir? Mr. O'Sullivan?
I'll go last. Let me think and collect my thoughts and see. I've had a lot going on in my head here. Is
You
there anything
go
I want to bring up?
I don't have anything at this moment, no.
Okay. Selectmen's reports. So, I have been still slow and steady, but I think I am still working with Todd Miller in the regional economic development position that he takes on. He's been working with me and doing what he can to assist in what I've been saying for a few years now about the whole hemp industry and how we can try to incorporate that into our region. He's reached out to different developers, even some people that are outside the country, that their country has a stronger industry in it already, so they kind of have a better history, and they're looking to see how that may continue into the United States and specifically the Northeast. As we get closer and I better understand the bigger picture of what's being talked about, I definitely will want to bring that to the board. I'm not gonna make any suggestions that we move forward with something without bringing it to the board, but I haven't gotten any detail. So I just want to explain that, the way I'm looking at it is, need to find kind of the chain from, from the farming, where does it go from there to the processing, from there to the manufacturing, from there to the retail. where are these locations starting in Massachusetts so that farmers know where to find the processor knows where to find the manufacturer? How many of these things could we actually find that would either fit in Barre or in one of our neighboring towns that can then take the next step that maybe Barre can be a growing and processing type. So it can somewhat create a similar but not the same replacement of what Barre wool was to some people in town. They remember the history of that was more your kind of your processing type step of manufacturing. Hemp might have something similar to that, or even if you revert it and you take hemp and you put it into a different product, maybe hempcrete can be something that even like Palmer Paving might be able to incorporate into part of their processing, because it might be an easier add-on to what they already have for an infrastructure on that site. I'm not saying I have any of these answers or they'd even be interested, but these are the questions I've been asking to try to find this chain, knowing that Leominster has a long plastics history. Well, maybe they want to get into the biodegradable plastics that hemp is being portrayed as an option. Various,
Right.
it's out there. So
it's a
I'm
way to
trying to
bring-
see how we can build it, because I know right now Massachusetts actually is more stringent on hemp development than the federal government. And so the Massachusetts, I think, needs to understand we should back off, because the federal government released all restrictions on hemp, and Massachusetts is still holding to the same restrictions the federal government imposed previously to start the concept. And they haven't changed. So I think Massachusetts needs to change like that, because they're just gonna get in the way and make it hard on all of us.
Well, they've already approved the one hemp grow here in our town, which we were notified of.
Yes.
So that's a start, but I agree, this is, it's, similar to a farming industry where someone's going to buy equipment and or buildings and make structures that are taxable for the town, that will add to our tax base, and is gonna create jobs.
Yeah.
And, creating jobs means more people might wanna live here closer to those jobs, might help property values overall, and it's what we need to do, we need to develop business. So it's a good way to go and look.
So I figured I'd just mention that that's something as I'm still trying to work through kind of the behind the scenes, but until I really make more progress, I don't have a lot to report. I just don't want you to be like, oh, where'd that come from, Matt? Not that you would be surprised by now that I've been talking to him. Here's your bigger friend.
Sort of halfway up a blind it fell.
This one's bigger than the little one. Anyway, I got distracted. I'm done.
Okay, so I did have one item. One item. The municipal parking lot above Rice Park,
Yeah.
which one of the site locations we talked possibly for a station in the future. During the construction of the common, there was actually for a time a sign put up calling it a certain roadway. I don't know if it is actually a roadway or not going
It's
through
like a
there.
detour during, and
They
maybe.
detoured through, originally repaved the whole parking lot. Now, when it was repaved, it's never been relined, and people park all over it. And people coming downtown, depending where they're coming from, you come down School Street and come across that parking lot, go down 62, you don't necessarily get there from the common.
Yeah.
My belief is it was still intended to be a roadway for a portion of that. If that's the case, we need to make that determination and line it as such. Cars often parked, there's one vehicle that's been there for months with Florida plates, which the police should pay attention to that. If you have out-of-state plates and you're living here, that doesn't jive in Massachusetts, that should have been transferred to Mass plates. But that parks right in the middle of what's the roadway. If someone does come through there at night or comes through around the corner, it's right where the roadway portion's expected to be, but there's no signage and no labeling telling them not to do so. The other day, when I was leaving town, there was actually a couple of 20-yard trucks with trailers, equipment trailers, parked side by side, blocking the entire access to get through there. I had to weave between parked cars to get across to Route 62. That's my only option to get to Route 62. If I go up to the top, I can't take a left. There's no other
Or going
option.
down to Valley.
Or I could go down Valley and go down across.
But I hear you,
But
it is out of the way to
it's-
do that.
It
I get
is.
you.
So they're just sitting there blocking it, and technically, there's nothing that says they can't. So I think we need to address that lot and decide if it's gonna be a road. If it's a road, we can always discontinue it and go to the other side for fire station one up there in the future. But I think and believe me, a lot of cars go through there. I live right there. Cars go through there all day and all night. It's heavily used, little piece of road. So I think it's important that we, if it's not a road, we designate it as a road. And we at least have a center line and some edge marks to designate the corridor so people are not parking in it. Whether or not we line the whole parking lot, I don't know if that should have been a part of the common project. I believe it used to be lined before they repaved it. People park wherever. There's, no structure to the parking, which is difficult.
We probably need to look to see if there's a right of way. Or a public right of way, I should say more specifically. A right of way might actually just say that it's access to the people that live up on the common for parking. And if there is that right of way, then we have to follow that, because that wouldn't be legally binding, saying that's intended for the residents that live on the common.
But even if it's a municipal parking lot, there still has to be an entrance and an exit and a corridor to make sure it can be used as a parking lot. Even a parking lot would have a corridor that you don't park within, so you can
Agreed.
access it. So we
should do some records review and then
and then
create a plan from there.
and
I
hopefully
agree.
before this this fall's done, get this thing lined. At the very least, for a corridor for no parking, and,
Yeah.
or line spaces where they're allowed to park, and sign this as parking in line spaces only.
Parking stripes on the left and a big no parking fire lane written on the right, from your
Right,
backyard
right.
looking
Something
towards
like that.
62 is how I'm.
But
viewing
I
it.
do believe that at a time, there was a sign put up there on the School Street side that named it as a road. Whether that was a temporary thing put up, or why it was there, I do not know. Can't tell if it's still there, everything's overgrown with trees there. But it wasn't on the other side, it was on the other one side.
Okay.
So it may actually be a road, it may not. And if it is, it's easy to say it's a road and get out there and line it.
Yeah.
So,
All
something
right.
I think we should officially say we should move on with, and maybe have the, DPW will probably know if it's a road. And we could find the records to according, but that would be the only
And
thing
just
that was.
email Andrew prior to some meeting if you want to revisit it, just to put it on the agenda.
I've talked to him about it the other day, but.
I just meant to
really
put
need
it on the agenda
Yeah.
the next time, and we can really, as a
Yeah.
board, say, yes, let's do this, take some action and vote.
Yeah, you can at least go pick, and I've already talked to him, you can find out, if it's a road or not. That's easy enough to find out. It's not an agenda item for that, to see if it's a road, just determine.
No, it's an
But-
agenda item to vote to say, let's plan a striping plan. That's all I meant.
Yeah, unless it's a road that may be already part of the DPW's purview to pave, or to line any road in town, I don't know.
And I guess.
So the
you are
research
correct,
is
and it's a
research.
DPW commission thing that we still vote on, and
It may be down there, it may need to go to the commission. And be done. So that's it, that's the only thing I'll bring up.
all right.
Andrews.
Anybody else? Anybody else? I'll bring something up, yes. I was approached about the town's action or lack thereof still moving forward with any potential solar array development on town property. The answer is we have reviewed it. We have found that currently there is nothing economically feasible that the town can view based on our understanding, and a couple of potential developers that pretty much have stated that the conditions of the National Grid network here and the cost to upgrade their system for us to interconnect and the cost to install a system of any significant size on town property where we actually own a significant amount of space is not feasible for a payback that makes any sense to the town. That is our understanding and our knowledge. None of the incentives at National Grid based on DPU and DOER that have been issued still remain. National Grid's territory has been eaten up. There are no incentives left. National Grid has put a freeze on all interconnection applications that I understand because they're still reviewing their transmission study, which means that even if you had a design that reached to a one line diagram level and could submit an application, They're not interested in reviewing that application at this time because they are focusing their engineering on their existing grid system. So they know what they have to do just to deal with the current load, let alone how to predict future loads. So they're in a kind of a standstill. They're getting close to ending that transmission study, my understanding is. But that still doesn't change the fact that Barre is the second largest, if not the largest community in National Grid territory in regard to the total amount of solar and the capacity of that system to accept it. In other words, we have maxed out our grid in Barre with our solar development already compared, when you include all private and municipal and any type of solar installed in town. Any new solar, no matter what size that goes in outside that minimum 25 kilowatt system that is minor and they don't consider it an effect, but it also never pays back if your municipality makes something that small. It's not worth the investment. National Grid's gonna have to upgrade their wires and their substation connection on the circuit that feeds your street, all the way to the point of your connection. They would have to upgrade it. That means those costs could range anywhere from $25,000 to potentially up to $400,000 just to upgrade to get back to their substation. That has nothing to do with the cost of the actual solar installation or the agreement you have with the developer if you're gonna do a purchase power agreement or if you're gonna do a lease. These are all still costs though that that developer would have to pay attention to. And if we tried to do it on our town farm site where people have talked about the historical use of a landfill potentially there that never got capped, I agree with Andrew. He's got written documentation that says the cost to cap this could be $500 to $1 million, something like that. And to me, that's minimal. That's like, you're just scraping the, because it doesn't include the cost for all the consultants to support the town, to present it. So that's the install capping cost as my understanding of the industry. So you're still not talking about anywhere from $30,000 to $80,000 for a civil engineer to do the role necessary to be the town's engineer to go through the whole process. The timeline, if you've got to cap it, it's going to take you a year to cap it before you can install your solar on top of it. So that means even if we execute an agreement today, we got 2 years before solar's on site. 2 years before we're actually getting any payment back, minimum. That's been my history. And I have been paying attention to the industry because that's what my full-time job is. I work with National Grid. I work with a municipality that buys and pays for their own solar. I've got 5 projects on my desk now that we're considering doing, but we know that the timeline is out there. But I also work for a municipality whose budget is hundreds of times bigger than the town of Barre. So they can front something and wait 15 to 20 years for it to pay itself off. If we front that, our loan cost is gonna cost more than we're gonna get paid back. So we're actually paying money every year. The municipality I work for, they actually can budget and do it in such a way because of how they can consolidate all their capital and everything. The payback is kind of paying for the loan payment every year. And they finally break even after 15 or 20 years, and then they're making money. Barre is not built with that certain resource right now to make that investment, to wait 15 to 20 years to get 5 years of payback. And in the meantime, handle all the maintenance costs along the way, which can pop up out of the blue at $50,000 to $100,000 if an inverter goes down in 10 years. Or you lose all the production and now you're paying for nothing and still waiting to come up with the money to pay for the fix. So I'm just explaining the challenges of a municipality of our size and our current resources. But I have talked to Andrew, we have talked about an RFP, we're looking at and I had asked him to go beyond what we started with. We had started talking about Town Farm Road. He had brought up the public safety building as an option, whether it was a roof mount or, I think that's what he started with. I said, we should just throw all of Barre town property on an RFP and let them choose what fits. Maybe somebody can come to us and say, you know what, I could do that, or I could do that. I would also recommend, if we're gonna go that way, we throw in Ruggles Lane School as another site that we own. Maybe somebody comes in and says, we can put a pretty big parking canopy there. And then, who knows, you know, electric vehicle charging stations come right off of that. You get different grants for that, different benefits to the town, et cetera. Potentially, we have found it in the municipality I work for that the canopies actually did help with your snow removal, because despite we didn't install guttered systems, it did reduce the amount of precipitation that made it on the vehicles that parked underneath. And it didn't create worse icing, because that was one of our fears, is like, all right, so now it melts there, it drips down, and then it gets in the shade and it refreezes, and now we're constantly having to salt and sand under the shadow on those 40-degree winter days that then turn into 20-degree nights. They said that didn't happen. So I'm just saying that we've had it for a couple of years, and the schools have said that did not happen to our canopy, which was one of our concerns. So somehow it just doesn't accumulate fast enough to refreeze. The vehicles maybe create enough that I can't explain it. They just have said that it hasn't affected their snow removal effort.
Don't you have to do maintenance and get the snow off those canopies so they still generate electricity?
You don't have to. We didn't have to. The only time we ever went out was when this was, I'm trying to remember, maybe 3 years ago. We had that January where it seemed like it snowed every 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so the snow started piling up enough that it started curling over the snow guard at the end. And so what they did is they did go by with a bucket truck and someone kind of knifing off that wave. They didn't remove it up above, they just made it so it wouldn't just drop down on someone. And as it fell down behind, and then they replowed and cleared it, and then nothing.
Doesn't the snow cut the production of electricity on it?
The snow does, but when we did the calculations, we assumed a very low production in the winter anyway, just for that reason. So we weren't overly concerned, but when the sun comes out, it melts faster because it actually heats from the bottom up. So it hits to the bottom of the snow, and then the bottom of the snow melts first, which can almost create that sliding avalanche effect. But we did get snow guard, so it wouldn't do that on us, so we weren't worried about it burying vehicles. But it tended, our experience is we got more production than we expected in the winter, and we were surprised by that. Not a lot. Again, we weren't counting any of those winter months really as what we expected to get any production, but we were surprised to get any at all. Because there were some times we had a good 12 inches of snow just stuck on there for a full month. So, but if anybody's interested, it is all something that they recorded the data. So we have production data for every month. It's available at worcesterenergy.org. You can look at every one of the solar sites and how much they produce every month since they've been in. So I just want people to know it's available. You can go out and see what a system does produce, but you also compare it to the size of the system. Like we have an 8 DC megawatt system on the landfill that does provide power for 900 homes in a year, which is great. Except you've got to realize there's 14,000 street lights in Worcester, let alone the number of homes. So it's still just a sliver of the percentage of the power a municipality like that uses. But it's the largest municipally owned array in, well, it was at the time, in the state. Most of ours, though, our biggest ones are like 200 kilowatts. You don't get a lot of these big megawatt systems municipally owned all over everywhere. You don't get like 5 municipally owned 2 megawatt systems in most communities. They don't have the space. You don't have the acreage to give it up. It takes a lot of space for that. It's 26 acres to get those 8 megawatts. Are you going to give up all, like, I don't think the town of Barre, outside of conservation land, probably doesn't own 26 acres that we could give up without wiping out buildings and other things that we have on our property. I don't know, maybe if you add in every park and cemetery, because we have 21 cemeteries, but I don't. I'm just suggesting that the opportunities and the resources the town of Barre have, based on my understanding and being in the system and looking at it, I don't see an economically feasible option at the time in the situation we're dealing with. But I am more than willing to listen to anybody else on the board, Andrew, anybody from the community that can show me evidence I'm wrong. But I want people to also know that I have not been ignoring the industry. It's what I do 40 hours a week, so I don't go running off on the weekends or other days to go somewhere else so somebody can tell me what I'm learning Monday through Friday. I am paying attention, I am aware, I do webinars, I pay attention to this stuff. I do think people think that sometimes because you don't go to some event where they explain it, that you're not learning about it. There are other ways to learn about it, and I just wanted to present that. I'm really trying to learn about it just because I have to. I'm paid to do it in a different job, let alone what I'm doing for the board and for the town of Barre, just in this role. But I'm open if anybody has any other thoughts. I just wanted to bring it up as my last selectman thing before we close. I don't know if you have any other thoughts. I know this is something, Sam, you've been concerned with.
No, I'm just, I'm pleased to come to the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Other than that, I would make a motion to adjourn.
Anyone to cover any of the last topics on his report?
Unless you guys wanted to go over anything.
Gaston Pond Dam, curious what,
Yeah, so anyway, with that, I am scheduled to have a conference call tomorrow with Ty and Bond, who was the last consultant to do a report there. Will probably be the next one, or we'll probably be doing the re-inspection soon after our discussion at last week's DPW meeting. But discussing with them what they see as being necessary improvements to them to that dam to bring it up to what they would consider to be a safe standard. So that's on my agenda for tomorrow. The online permitting, I did discuss this with the other department heads who do use the online permitting system. We felt that the value of what we're getting with the current online permitting system versus what we're paying is not there. So we did send them a notice that we were going to terminate service at the end of the contract in September. I did, the governmental rep did reach out to me today with the revised pricing structure that, based off the concerns that I forwarded to him. Taking that under advisement right now because it didn't necessarily hit the target that I asked him to hit. So I'll talk with the department heads that use the permitting system tomorrow to see whether or not it's something to entertain or if we're just going to proceed with canceling the online permitting service.
What's the replacement plan?
The replacement plan is to basically go back to tracking through Excel documents and and fillable PDFs versus online permit tracking. And at least brings it back to the whole, the permit goes out, it has to be signed physically in hand by the board. It can't be sent out as a digital copy.
Can you look into our, who built the website? I forgot. That's not the same
No.
maintenance
It's a
tech guy that we have now. That's
No, it's a
CMDs
different-
or whatever is not that.
No, the website and the online permitting are two different sites. This was, the online permitting.
Oh, no, I understand.
Yeah.
I just mean on the website.
Okay.
Can whoever built the website work with you so that if you have a fillable PDF, it automatically updates a Microsoft Access file that says this was pulled on this date, filled out, and it can pull the names off of the fillable PDF and populate that for you, so you're not now needing Excel and manually updating, it just kinda happens.
Yeah, we'll wait to see what our options are on that. I'm also looking at a different system that it's actually, it's an access-based system that's used by the town clerk's office. We use it for our boards and commissions tracking list. She offers a similar type service for online, for permit tracking. And that service is about $2,000. Flat, pay for it, done.
Per year?
No, per year, just
Really?
flat, done.
One fee?
Here's your system versus $18,000 per year is what the
Viewpoint.
costs were for Viewpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could spend 18,000 and get about 2 or 3 of those $2,000 things just built and done. And then it's just us keeping track of it, really, is what that is you, we
do
pay
it.
CM geeks to archive what's necessary, and then it kinda keeps itself, right?
Right, I mean, we do about 820 permits per year between building, Board of Health, and Board of Selectmen. Those are the 3 offices that were utilizing the system. So for 820 permits, it's not,
Yeah.
it's not value added for that cost.
And they're not, if I'm correct, it doesn't sound like Viewpoint. It can't be customized well enough to fit our special event permit processing or our other things where,
We were getting there.
I know you were getting there, but
Yeah.
it
It was
was,
still.
the hole's missing getting everybody else to use it.
You need full buy-in for it to be really the tool that you want it to be. In order for that to happen, you need every department to then utilize the system for their permitting. Well, every department that you add adds another department onto your costs and further makes the product more and more expensive. So
They charge you for every person's access.
every department that you add. So unless, because we might require, the fire department to sign off on something.
They're like that free app you get, then they charge you like $10 every time you use it for some reason.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we got them in, but now it's like, oh, 99 cents
So-
for this, $10 for that, $3 for this.
The fire department, I'm just using them as an example, but, they probably won't normally look at that unless they're doing their permits in it, so they're not gonna think to go into the system to go approve the permits of another department unless they're regularly using it. So that's where you kind of end up.
When they do
With
burn
different
permits.
And it's gotta have the ability to do the notification to tell someone, it's on your desk.
Correct. That's, yeah.
Are there burn permits going through this old system, or they do something different for their
No,
permits?
they do something different for burn permits. Burn permits are actually done through District 8, and it's all coordinated as like a central purchasing where they actually go in and everybody that's within District 8 knows who else is burning, so it's
Okay.
not tracked through the same system.
All right.
I didn't want people in other towns knowing about burning behind my barn.
All the other
see
towns are
if
gonna
we-
mutually
You
wanna
tell
know.
me you're telling someone else?
When they see the smoke coming out, they might know.
I was gonna say.
That's at least man those towers for. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, gentlemen, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam, for your attendance. Enjoy.
We gonna vote on that?
Mind you, camera's still rolling.
Are we voting on that motion?
Does someone shut the camera?
Call for
off?
vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.